yesterday we started building the file system, file folders, file class. But we stopped because we wanted to build out the metadata folder first, because the metadata will be used by both the file and the folders as well. So to do that, I'm just going to start off by creating two folders. The first folder I'm going to create is the exceptions folder. We're going to use exceptions folder right now, but for now we shouldn't worry about it. The next folder I will create will be the metadata. The metadata folder. In this metadata folder, we would just have index.ts, and in this index.ts file we would just export stuff like file node from file node. Is file node default? I don't remember setting it as default. Yeah, file node is default. So let's say file node. We're going to export both file node and we're going to export file node params. Trying to see something. This doesn't seem right. File node. We have an export default file node, so why is it? You know what? We're not gonna worry about that right now. Let's just delete this and we'll figure that one later. So let's go back to the metadata. So in the metadata, we will have to create first we'll create a metatype folder. Let's call this metatype. And then we'll just say TS, and this metatype folder it will just hold an enum, so we can just say public enum metatype, and then we want to export this, exports public enum, so we would say file, and then we would say directory. Actually, let's just call this folder to make it easier, and let's just add some comments. This metadata is used for files, and this metadata is used for folders. And then we just add another comment. Okay, so now we would then need to do a meta permission to know what permission we have to do with a file or folder. And this one too would be an enum, so we can call this meta permission.ts. And this file too, it will be the same thing. Exports enum meta permission. So we'll have read, whether it can be readable, writes, whether it is writable, and whether you are allowed to delete it. So for this, you would just say read, write, delete, and then the next thing we would need to do is okay, and then just gonna delete this. And then the next thing we would need to do is we would need to create the file type. File types would just be what type of files do we allow in this. What type of files we allow. So let's do that right now. So file type. I can't type today. File type equals to file type.ts, and then it will just be exports enum file type. And then this enum will just be JavaScript, Java, text, txt. You can support HTML, you can support XML, JSON. Basically all those files that we can that can be turned into string rather than trying to go from binary to string and stuff like that. All those files is easy for us to transport. We can later build it on to allow different types once we have the basic understanding of it. But for now, this is the files that we're going to allow. And let's just write a little comment. And then we'll just add those two comments to it. Okay, so the next thing we will need to do is now we need to work on the metadata, the actual metadata folder class. So to do that, first we just create the metadata. Actually, we just call this index.ts. Yeah. So in this index.ts, we will have a default name. Actually, no, not a default. Trying to think if we want to do default. Now we wouldn't make a default. We wouldn't. Okay, so first thing we would need to do is we just need to import those files that we just created. So file type, then we need to import meta type. Other permission will work too, but and then we will need to import meta type, and then since all that is imported, then we need to create a export class. We'll call it exports class metadata, right? And in this metadata, private final. This TypeScript have final. Final type would be it does not have final, sadly. Okay, so type will be meta type. We will implement it later. We then need to do private file type, which would just be meta file type. That would be my file type, and then we would need to do private string name, which would just be a string, and then we need private date modified. Should be a date, private date created. Should be a date, private date. Yeah. And then date modified, date created, and then we will need a private size, which would be a string. and then we would then need a private permissions, which would just be this. Yeah. Actually, we would just set it to empty for now. We will do it all together in the thingamajig. So the next thing we need to do would be say export type metadata params, and then this type will have the following. Type is required, and type has to be meta type, because without the meta type we would not know exactly what it is. Since type is required, name is not required because we can just have a default name for it. Name will be string. I forgot to put private path will be string as well. Path is not required. We can just put that in as the default path as well. String, and then what else do we need? File type is not required. If file type is not provided, we'll use a default file type. And default file type would just be text. File type, which would just be not required. File type, and then we also need to be able to have permissions. Permissions has to be a loaded string, and then it would just be this. And are we missing anything else? We need the date created, which would just be a date, and it's not required as well, because if it's not provided, we would just assume that today was the date it was created. And then we need date modified, again not required. If it's not provided, we would just assume today was the date it was modified. So dates modified will be date as well. Okay, so now in the constructor, what we will need is constructor params, and we will just set that to metadata params. Okay, so in this params, first we will just, the type is already provided to us, so this dot type equals param dot type, and then we can just fill in the blank this dot name. If params dot name, if params dot name is not provided, we would need a default name, and the default name I'm choosing for this would be just an empty string for now. We don't really need anything pizzazzy. So, and then the next thing we would need to do would be this dot path. If a path is not provided, the default path would just be this as well. And then we say if type equals to, my bad, let me put this dot type. If this dot type equals to params dot, not params, equals to meta type dot file, equals this dot file type equals to file type dot txt, else we want to set the file type equals to this dot file type equals to null. I just slapped myself. Okay, so Now we need to set the permissions. If permissions params that's permissions equals to null. If the permissions is equals to null, then we will need to set a default permission. For the default permissions, it would just be meta permission dot read, meta permission dot write, and meta permission dot delete. So if none is given, then we will just set it to allow all. Else we will do this dot permissions. Oh, we don't need that. We don't need that. We can just say params dot permission else. Do that. And then the reason we put this file because we only want the file type to be given if it's an actual file we have. And then for the size, we just say this dot size, and we always set the default size to 0 before we change it later. So then we want to say this dot dates created will be params dot date created, or we will just use new date. Oh my bad. We can just say dates that's now. Oh shoot. I think if you put new date, yeah, this should work. I don't know. Oh well, we'll figure it out. Hopefully it works. It's gonna work. Why? Because I said it would. Okay, so this that's dates modified will just be params new dates, and then this should be pretty much it for the constructor. Now we need to work on creating the functions that go along with the metadata. First, we need to have a get type function, which would just return this dot type, and then we just wanted to say, okay, and then we want to say is file, which is just telling us whether this metadata it belongs to a file. Return type this dot type equals to meta type dot file, and then we want to say get file type, and then it will return this dot is file equals to this dot file type. Oh, because file type is already null, so we'll just do this dot file type, and then we can then create a function to set the file type. For the sets file type, what we want to do is we just want to say set file type, and then we will say file new type equals to file type, and then it will return nothing. First, we need to check if this is a file. If it is a file, then the next thing we need to do is then we want to go ahead and set the file type equals to new type, and then We just want to add comments right there. And we want to have a size getter, which is just going to help us get the size of the meta type. So we would just say get size, and then this will just return size. And then right here we want to set the size, so set size equals to size new size, and then this would just be a string. Set size would just be this dot size equals to new size. Then when we're setting the size, what we want to do is we also want to change the dates it was modified. So to do that, we just say this dot dates modified. Modified would be new dates, right? Because we don't want to leave it as the same date. And also right here, we also have to change this as well. So this dot dates modified equals to new dates. Okay, so set file type, set size. Let's create a small comment for set size. Okay, and then we need a get path to get the path, and then we will also need a one to set the path as well. So let's do that right now. Get path. We will just return in this dot path. Set path. You're getting a string as path, and then let's just create this little small comments. And just tells it it sets the path. We just have to do this dot path equals to that date's modified. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of getting tired of changing the date modified over and over again. So we were just going to create a small private function, like typing that whole thing out. We're just going to create a small private function. So private change dates modified. We wouldn't need anything. We would just do this dot dates modified equals to new dates. Okay, so right here, all we would just be doing now, we just calling this change date modified. Change date modified. See how much simpler this is? So simple. Okay, and then that we need to get name. Let's do this right now. Get name equals to return this that's name, and then we need to be able to set the name as well. Sets name equals to name string, and then this that's name equals to name, and then this dot change date modified, and then we need to be able to do get date created and get dates modified, and then we can do that with get dates created, return this that's dates created, and then get dates modified, The only reason I changed the directory because in the comments it kept using directory as its term, so I was like, okay, why not? So then we just need a few functions to let us know if we can read the file, which would just be like can read, return, and then we'll have can writes, which is just basically be the same thing. Can writes will be the same thing. Return matter permission that's writes in this dot permission, and then we will have a can deletes. And the can delete will be the same thing as well. Deletes. Make sure just be return matter permission dots deletes in this dot permissions. And then right here, we would need to be able to turn this object into JSON. So we just say to JSON into the pin any. What we'll do is, because it's still the same idea behind it, key string. Is it going to be string as well? Yes, everything is being transformed to string. So we'll do string. Key string. So now it's giving us an error because we haven't actually returned anything. JSON, we're going to do let's JSON O as in JSON object equals to this, and then right here we're returning JSON object. So it's not returning any error anymore. So now we can go ahead and add the things we need to add. So we'll say meta type equals to this dot type. This is returning the error, so let's see if we can do it to exponential to string, turn string representation of it. Let's see if that works. I don't know what this will do, but So this is just a query, right? What if we went to MetaType and then we set this equals to file, and then it's giving us an error here. So we set this equals to directory. Would that still give us an error? No. Good. Alright, so next we need to set the name. We just do this .name. Next we will need to set the path. Actually, it might be a little bit better if we just create a type called MetaData JSON. Export type MetaData JSON. And then we will say that is what it will be returning. So that way if we're making a mistake initializing it, we would know, and then they can know as well. So let's see what we need to add. Basically, all of this, type is string and is required. Name string required as well. Path is string required as well. File type string required as well. Permission is just this. It's a list of, yeah, so let's just do array string so we can know as well. Array string required as well. And then dates created is a string, and then dates modified is a string. So let's say meta type, and let's say name. Let's say pat. Sorry, this video is taking a little longer than expected. Permission, dates created, and then dates modified. Of course, it's giving us an error here because, you know, we actually told it what we want to return. Name, path. The path will just be this dots path. And then next thing we would need to return would be trying to see if it can give us some errors. Okay, good. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so since it's adding the unresolved part, we can just do the JSON object real quick. File type will be this dot file type. Is returning an error, so we can just change this file type to give us string equals to JavaScript equals to Java equals to text equals to txt equals to HTML equals to XML, and then finally equals to JSON. So it shouldn't return any error any longer. and then the permissions would just be, and then did we set meta permissions? Oh, we need to set this to read, write, delete. delete. So right now, if we just were to do this dot permissions, it should not give us any error. And then we would just say this dot date created dot to string and then we would just do the same thing, but this would be called date modified. Date modified dot to string, and then we can just return this. If we just do this. And then the last thing we would need to do is we would just need to add the get ext, which is just get extension switch cases, and we can just do that as get ext, and then this will return string, and then we can say add a little comment to let us know what this does. Okay, we can say let ext equals to below. First, we're going to say if this dot is a file, else we would like to return this. Oh, we don't have to do a return statement. We can just say this.ext. Return this.ext. Not this.ext. Just return ext. Okay, so drum roll, please. So now we'll just have switch cases for every single one of them. We'll say switch this.get file type. Case JavaScript. They didn't let me. You want to do ext equals to .js, and then we would like to break case Java. We would like to do ext equals to .java, and then we would like to break, and then the same situation for a case text. We would like to do ext equals to .text, and then we would like to break, and then we have case txt, which will be ext equals to .txt. Oh shoot, it's almost 40 minutes. We would like to break, and then we'll have one for HTML, ext equals to .html, and then we would like to break case XML, which would just be ext.xml. I don't know if that's the correct extension, but we'll just leave it like that, and then we'll just do break, and then case JSON. It would just be ext equals to .json break, and once that is done, then we would just have a default of ext equals to nothing, and then we would just like to break anyways. So if this runs correctly, we have fully built a metadata. So now that this is fully built, the next part would be to introduce the metadata to our program, which is what we're going to do next video. I'll see y'all later.